Hello everyone, I'm going to make a short video on fiber optics. I've been working with fiber optics pretty well with the Han Solo and Carbonite, and I'm getting really close to finishing this guy off. Let's see, did we have it resumed? I have resumed, of course I do. Getting real close to finishing this off, and you can see there's a little bit of light fiber optic work on the back. So I just want to do an overview and explain what I'm doing with this and give some general ideas on how to work with fiber optics. Okay, let's start with what a fiber optic is. So we can state this. This is a fiber optic. It's a piece of plastic designed to transmit light. Okay? Now what we have right here is a laser. And it's not a lab quality laser, it's a handheld laser. You turn it on, you can kind of see the green ring right there, and you can see the pattern on my hand. I've got a beam diffuser on the front of it, and if I take the beam diffuser off, now I got a solid beam. I don't want that reflecting at the camera too much, because it might actually hurt the camera. This is not a laser pointer. Laser pointer is 20 milliwatts. This one is actually a 1 watt laser, so it's quite a bit stronger than your typical laser pointer. I have it on my bench vise so I don't have to hold it, and I don't want to run it for too long. I don't know how good it is for the emitter to run for a long period of time with this laser. I can hold my hand on it for a little bit, but if I hold it in place too long, I can feel it warming up a little bit, and I don't want to do that. It's not too strong a laser. The only big worry with this kind of laser is stray reflections getting in your eye and blinding you. Outside that, playing around with it, it's kind of okay. But it's going to be really good for fiber optics. Now this is a pretty thick fiber optic, and if I put it in the laser beam path, we can see it's lighting up, and that's one of the reasons why I'm using a light laser instead of an LED. And you can see on the camera it is transmitting quite a bit of light. In fact, it is putting a pretty good pattern up on the ceiling. That's because there's a lot of light going down this fiber optic in a short throw. If I were to use, say, one of these little LED finger lights on it, it does light it up, but you can't see it as well for the camera purposes. So I'm using the laser. Now, you can see the laser light traveling down the fiber. And if I were to take my hand and start bending the fiber, you can see it's transmitting light fairly well. I mean, everything's being painted green. It's because we've got a lot of light going down that fiber. And I can bend it quite a bit. Okay? Now, according to physics, there is a critical angle of which you cannot, if you get too small of an angle, light quits transmitting down the fiber. Now, my experience is you can bend the fibers too much, and then they stop transmitting light. But that angle is really high bend. That's because the fibers don't have a huge diameter. And because of the small diameter, I mean, this is a big fiber. Most fibers aren't this big. Because of the smaller diameter, they can handle pretty sharp bends and still transmit light. For example, I'm going to shift to a smaller fiber here. Here's a smaller fiber, and if I grab that fiber and really give it a yank, and now that's not dropping light because of the fiber being bent. It's dropping light because I'm not keeping it in the light source. I'm having to bend it too much. But you can see when I get it in the light source properly, it is still carrying quite a bit of light through it. Okay? Let me zoom that a little bit so it's a little easier to see. There we go. So if I get this in the laser beam, we can see the light being transmitted through the fiber, and we can see that I'm bending it pretty sharp. I mean, it's not how tight of an angle, it's how sharp the bend is. So bending a fiber 180 degrees doesn't affect it. It's bending it 180 degrees in a really short distance like I'm trying to do here. This one's still transmitting an awful lot of light, and you can bend it up to the point where it is permanently bent because I've overstressed it. But you can bend it almost to the point like I have this one. Now on this one we are going to get a bad reaction in this bend. Okay, and it takes me a little bit to get it aligned right because, well, I don't have it clamped. Transmitting light, pretty good. I've got a kink in the fiber. Now if I take the fiber and start bending it excessively, it reaches a point, and you can see it if I can get the light right there. I've bent it too much, and no more light's traveling. Light is still traveling down the fiber, but it's greatly diminished. Okay? So there is a point where you overbend your fibers. As long as you don't really force it, you're going to be fine. Just keep in mind, you can overbend the fibers, and they will quit transmitting light. Now, let me go ahead and shut this off. So we don't need that anymore. All right, so we know what a fiber optic is at this point. The next question is, what do you do with fiber? I mean, how do you work with them? One, they are plastic, so can I use plastic glues on them? I wouldn't use a solvent-based glue. So I wouldn't use any of your, like, Tamiya Extra Thin, Tamiya Green, Tamiya Orange, you know, the old Tester's tube glue, some of the other glues that I hear about out there. I wouldn't use them. They're going, if it's a solvent-based glue, you'd run the risk of dissolving your fibers. I've never actually tried it, so I don't know if you can dissolve the fibers or not, but I would assume you can. Okay, so I wouldn't try that kind of glue. Do not use this. This is your dollar store super glue, high quality super glue, dollar store super glue. Doesn't matter. Don't use super glue. This will affect the fibers and makes them brittle and they break. So super glue is a no-no. Okay? What does that leave us? It leaves us Elmer's glue. Elmer's glue works fine. PVA glue in general works fine. I happen to like to use, let me find it. I'm not prepared with that part. Should be, but I'm not. My favorite for working with fibers is this stuff. The camera will focus on it if I give it a moment. Microsol Crystal Clear. It is a PVA glue. This bottle might actually be dried out, unfortunately. It is a PVA glue. It's just formulated a little bit different than this. Like, kids will eat this and just get a tummy ache, maybe. I wouldn't eat this. This is not formulated to be non-toxic. It dries clearer than this, and it will be a little bit stronger. Not a lot stronger, but just a little bit stronger. I like using the Micro Crystal Clear better than Elmer's School Glue. Now, if I have a choice, what I really like to use is your good old 5-minute epoxies. Okay, I buy it in the big economy tubes. This doesn't cost that much more than those little syringes. And you get a lot more glue out of it. I've been using these 2 tubes for like 3 years now. The problem with this is it's like gluing with a hand grenade. Once you mix it, you're on a time limit. You get it on something, you're not getting it off. This is resin, like what resin models are made out of, just formulated differently to cure quickly. It is strong like that kind of resin. It might actually be stronger. I'm not sure of its strength. I just know it's a lot harder to sand than that kind of resin is. So this is what I prefer. It doesn't harm the fibers. It's really strong. It's hard to pull the fibers out. In fact, I broke one of the fibers on this model, on this rebuild upgrade. I broke this fiber right here, and I had to drill it out and replace it. And because I drilled it out, I used a larger diameter fiber, so I could drill it out completely. And I had to drill it out. There was no pulling it out. That epoxy resin right there was not coming out otherwise. So we just ran through the list of glues. We now know how to glue it together. Now there's a couple of choices on drilling. People like to use Dremels to drill holes with. I don't like Dremels. I like this guy. Okay, the battery-powered Dremels I've heard are a lower RPM and can actually drill plastic instead of melting it. But your typical Dremel rotary tools moving at 1,000 to 5,000 RPM, that is going to melt the plastic before it drills it. I had to use the Dremel on this guy to remove part of the plastic here to make room for the fiber that runs right here. This switch mounted almost flush with the back. It's still raised a little bit right here, but it's enough that the back cover does close and I don't have to move the fiber a little bit. So you can tell by this edge though that it ate through the plastic instead of cutting it. So Dremels tend to melt plastic instead of cut. So I like the Tamiya handy drill. Okay, this is a model kit. It's on Amazon. It's about $30, unfortunately. It's a little expensive. But you can see with the speed of it, it doesn't drill too quickly. It drills like a drill should. There's no variable speed to it, unfortunately. It comes with one chuck and one drill bit. Now, collet. The collet only fits a certain range of drill bits, but if you look on Amazon and read through some of the questions, some people have posted what collets you can buy. There are some Dremel collets that do work with it, and if I open my box of drill bits here, these brass ones, these are the collets that work with it. All of these fit in the Tamiya handy drill just fine. I also bought this set of Dremel collets, and these do not fit in there. They are too big. So you have to be careful. Someone also told me that this thing will work. No, this thing will not work in the Tamiya handy drill. It's still in here just because. You will need a good set of index drill bits. I have a couple of sets. There's this one. These are just random drill bits, kind of sort of sized, and I kind of take some extra styrene or the lid to a prescription and drill some holes and size it with my fibers to make sure I have the right drill bit, just to practice with. I do have some index drill bits. There's one set here. I have a much better set in my cabinet over there, and I can match the drill bit to the fiber. You want a hole for your fiber just a little bit bigger than the fiber, not a lot bigger. Okay, now, some tricks with working with fibers. Now that we've talked about drilling holes. Okay, this fiber right here, it's pretty thick. And I had a choice. I could glue it in here, okay? And once it's glued in, leave the fiber sticking out, and then cut it flush. Or what I did and could do, and this is what I did do, and it's really exaggerated on this because I use this as a demonstration at work, because I do talk about fiber optics at work. Let me use this box here. Okay, so I can give the camera something to focus on and we can see it up a little closer. Yeah, you can see it right there. If you notice the tip of the fiber is flattened and mushroomed out. The way you do that is you take one of these, or a cigarette lighter, or a candle, for all that matters, and you light it, and you just stick that in there for a second. Now, a couple of reasons for doing that. One, it mushrooms the tip of the fiber, okay? And if I give the camera a second, it will focus. It's just slow to focus for some reason tonight. It's raining outside, so it's probably just saying no. Just say no to focus when it rains. Anyhow, you can see it's mushroomed. Now if I pull that through the hole drilled from my fiber, it will stop at the hole. So if I paint the model, then do the fibers, this works great, because it pulls up to the hole and then you glue it and the fiber is already there and seated. It also polishes the end of the cut. Now on some models, I have left the fibers out, painted, and then cut them. And then I very carefully, and I don't use one of these, I use a cigarette lighter because I can adjust it a little bit, very carefully polish the end of the fibers. I prefer pulling the fiber through that's already polished. But some people like to leave the fibers out and then paint. Okay? I'm going to try something new. I'm going to be working with this. Some of you might recognize this sometime in the next few months. And this is going to get some fibers to it. I'm not going to be trying to accurize this. This is the old school Battlestar Galactica from Rebel. I've got two of them. One of them, the box is falling apart on me, so I'm just going to build it. I'm building it, putting some fibers in it. The only thing I'm going to try to correct a little bit is that bridge, because that bridge is horrible. That bridge should be thicker than that, and I'm just going to kind of sand off this detail in the back. Maybe replicate it with the resin cast, put a flat sheet on and put that on the top so I can run some fibers through the bridge right there. It'll look funny if I try to run them through otherwise. But the bridge on this is just horrible. It doesn't even have the proper detailing. So I'm going to redo the bridge. But the rest of it, I'm going to leave it alone. Most of the details on this are just wrong. I am going to light it up though. It's going in my movie room, so it's sitting on top of a bookcase lit up. So I'll detail what I'm doing there. Now we got our fibers run. We've talked about how to run the fibers, how to glue them, how do we light our fibers. Well, most of the time we light with LEDs, okay? But you've got to gather your fibers up and then have some way of getting the light from the LED to the fiber. One way is you can tape the ends of the fibers and then glue them, and then cut the ends flush so they all meet up. I've done that before. It's work, and then you can kind of glue the LED to the end of the fibers. Other way, and this is pretty common, take a brass tube, glue your LED in one end, glue your fibers in the other end, and you got your fibers shielded, and the fibers are at the light source. Now, the good thing about this is the brass is a metal, it light blocks, so you don't have any light leaking out of that brass tube. It works wonderful. Okay, you got all your fibers gathered up, you have your light block, great, everything works great there. Some of the limitations, though, is the brass tubes are small, so you can only put so many fibers in them at once, whereas if you had a bigger LED, you could gather more fibers to that LED. And true, you could just use a bigger brass tube. Now, I bought my brass tubes in an assortment of pre-cut sizes. I do have brass tubes I can cut, but if you buy an assortment of pre-cut sizes, I threw them in a bin, and then I just pretty much dig through this bin looking for what I want when I need it. And I have lots of different sizes in this little bin. Of course, I don't know when I'll use these big ones, but you never know. You might find a use for them. Okay, might start scratch building one day, like I would like to. But some of the smaller tubes are good for various things, like I can run a couple of wires up that and use it for a stand for a small, like, Mecha Collie kit. So the brass tube assortment works. And it's cheaper than buying a bunch of brass tubes. Okay. So we've got this all outlined. We've got what a fiber is, what kind of glues work. Do you cut the fibers beforehand to polish, run them through, or do you run them through and then cut them after you paint? And we've got how to put them in a brass tube and light them. I think that pretty much summarized a quick rundown on how to work with fiber optics. Okay, this guy's almost done. There's going to be videos on what I've been doing to it, but it is almost done. Basically, about all I got left to do, other than finish the wiring, is I got to cut this guy out right here and replace it with the resin part that I cast and wire up a USB port. And I've already checked. This thing's all wired for USB. So I'm going to have a USB port on it, and we're going to run the power through USB port. I'm not going to have a switch because it's going in the movie room. There's already a motion-controlled switch in there. So when you walk in the room, this guy's going to light up. All right. I hope you enjoyed the short video on how to work with fiber optics. I hope it helps.